To create the expanded state of our drop menu, what we'll first do is simply duplicate the buttons we've already created. So I'm going to click and drag to select both the button as well as the text. And I'm going to hold down my Option key, Alt on PC, and simply click and drag down to create a duplicate copy. Now these should snap directly in place, and I want them to be right next to each other. So I'll let go of the mouse, let go of the keyboard. Now for the text, I'm going to simply double click here, and we'll call this button 2. Of course, if we were creating this for real, we'd give it something more sensible like portfolio, paintings, drawings, something like that. But for right now, we're going to keep it very simple and call this button 2. Now, if we look down in our stage area, this doesn't automatically call itself button 2. It's calling itself text 1 copy. So we'll change the name here. And we'll also change button 1 copy to button _ 02. And we'll do the same thing for our third button. And we'll call this button 3. And we'll change our text down here at the bottom, as well as our button names. And we'll go ahead and collapse all of these. So the next thing I want to do is make sure we have our names correct in our properties. So this instance of the button is button 2. This instance of the button is button 3. Now, because we've made duplicates of the text and the buttons, all of our actions are identical. So we're going to change a few things here. So we'll simply right click on the button 2 text and open up the actions for text 02. And right now it is controlling the symbol for button 1. We need to simply change this to button 2. And we'll do the same thing for the mouse over. All right, we'll close this out. And we'll do the same thing for text 03. This needs to control button 3. All right, now let's test on our movie. We'll do Command Return. So all 3 of our buttons work. But there is a problem. This is what we'd want to happen in our expanded state, not in the initial state. So what I want to do next is on our main timeline, we're going to create 2 different labels. Now, the first thing we'll do is create a label. So we'll do Command L, Control L on PC, and we'll call this label Contract. And we'll next move our playhead just a little ahead here, and we'll create another label, Command L, and we'll call this Expand. Now, while we're sitting at our Expand label, I'm going to click and drag to select button 2 and button 3, the buttons as well as the text. And I want to go over to our properties, and it's set to always on. I want to set this to on. Okay. And I want to now move this to the contracted state. And what we should have at this point is our buttons are off. Now, the reason this happens is I actually have my auto keyframe mode turned on. So if this hasn't happened for you, simply go over here and just make sure this is set to off. Now, the next thing we want to do is we are going to create another action. So when you roll over the text of button 1, it automatically moves the playhead to the expand frame. So we'll right click on our text, open the text for text 01. What we have already set up, it's controlling the instance of button or button _ 01. And if you move the mouse out on this, it's basically saying that it's going to go to the up. Click over on mouse over. We have this going to the instance of over. Now, this is what we want to change. We're going to leave all of this the same, but when we move over the text of button 01, we also want it to go to the expand on our main timeline. So what we'll simply do is we'll hit return, go to our next line, and I'm going to simply click on stop at. And what this is basically telling us is sim, the main timeline, we want it to stop at, and instead of a time, we're going to type a quote and unquote, and we're going to simply write expand. So let's test out our movie. It's Command Return, Control Enter on PC. And so now, if I move over this, we now see our expanded buttons. All right, so I'll refresh this. So we now have our drop menu expanding. Now, the only problem is we haven't actually had this contract yet. So by duplicating our buttons and text, and by changing a little bit of our scripting, we've now created an expanded state of our drop menu.